As anyone who has met me knows, I am a runner. And I've done some pretty awesome races, from marathons to ultras. My longest run being a 50-mile run this past June in Ohio. Now today after chapel, I had been looking forward to running a virtual marathon, the virtual London Marathon. I haven't been able to get into the real thing yet, fingers crossed for next year, but I can still run that 26.2 miles from here with the help of their app that gives me some support and encouragement along the way. And do you want to hear a really good dad joke, one of my favorite dad jokes? All right, please laugh at it, because otherwise I'll feel really embarrassed by it. So, how do you know if someone's ever run a marathon? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Thank you, I appreciate that. So, unfortunately, with the whole idea of the London Marathon, virtual London Marathon, the best laid plans can sometimes get turned around. And between a number of things, it's not going to happen for me this year, at least. But even before that, I came to that unfortunate conclusion. It's been on my mind to talk today about the subject of endurance and what this means from a recovery as well as a running perspective. First of all, when we're training for a goal, and that's any goal, it can be challenging and, dare I say, easy with that first burst of inspiration, the intention that we're setting for ourselves, the motivation to reach that goal. And motivation or intention setting is only part of the battle, because we all know that when we set out to do something for the long haul, motivation can start to wane and our interests switch to other things. And instead of finding balance with our original goal, we shift away from it. I mean, if we look at New Year's resolutions as one example, after only 1 week, 25% of people already start losing their motivation and start giving up on their resolution. After about a month, 36% of people start giving up, and by the 6-month mark, about less than half of the people that originally started with that New Year's resolution and that motivation for that goal are continuing with that goal. Now, this was based on some statistics I found in a study from 2022, but that's typically the pattern that happens every year. So motivation might be a really good thing to help us start that journey towards whatever our goal is. But if we want it to last longer than a New Year's resolution lasts for most people, we need to develop that stamina and that endurance. When it comes to running, endurance is built up over time. Training plans, discipline, these are both key parts to the discipline of getting to that point where we have endurance. But also, we have to know our limits. And even stopping to look around every once in a while and enjoy what we're doing is key, because if we're not enjoying this, then that's another aspect that's going to lead us to giving up. You may have heard the metaphor that recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. Well, I want to correct that. Recovery is an ultra marathon, not a sprint. Now, during a marathon or even a sprint, there's a destination. There's a start and there's a finish. Now, during some, not all ultras, but during some ultras, some of these ultras can be looped races of a distance, and they're not so much about the actual distance. They're about the journey. They're not about the destination, they're about the journey. And that journey and mileage is whatever you can squeeze into the time that you have. If we just focus on the massive amount of miles that we are planning to do, it can be overwhelming. But if we focus on, say, 1 5-mile loop at a time, we can break it down into more manageable chunks that gives us opportunities to recover, to gain our bearings, to take natural fuel breaks after each loop. And when it comes to recovery, the just for today mindset reminds us that the only thing that I'm in control of is today, this very moment. I can focus on the rest of my life, but there's nothing I can do about 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. At this present moment, because I can only impact this present moment. And the truth is that the things that I do in this present moment are going to send ripple effects that will ultimately impact those years to come. Now, when you're racing, it's very helpful to have a crew. People who don't sugarcoat things for you, but will help you recover after each loop, help you get fuel, even come out with you for a loop. Having people around us helps us to keep those mind games away. The mind games that tell us we should just give up. The mind games that tell us just have a seat after that last loop and then you don't want to get up again and go back out there. Our crew reminds us to keep our heads in the game. They can't run our race for us, but they can stay by our side. They can encourage us and they can keep us moving forward. And if you don't have a particular crew for your race, there will be other runners on that course who will be happy to talk to you and encourage you on your way. You are not on your journey alone. Similarly, in recovery, who are your people? Maybe it's a support network, sponsor, or others. Remember this, we become who we surround ourselves with. If the people you are surrounding yourselves with are encouraging you to keep your head in the game, if they're assisting you and giving you chances to work with them, and as you respond to them also, you'll become more able to trust these people and your support network and keep moving forward. Surrounding ourselves with people who can help us grow is essential. In isolation, things like shame, self-doubts, fears, and insecurities can grow. With community, we recognize that we're not on this journey alone, and that we can both give and receive support, hear each other's stories, and recognize that the road or trail that we're running might be hours and hours alone, but you know what? Others have walked this before us, including the shame, the self-doubts, the fears, the insecurities. And we can learn from their experience, and where others have tripped up, we may also stumble, or we may grow from their experience. In the earlier reading from Hebrews, it reads, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by a huge crowd of witnesses, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the challenges that so easily trip us up. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us." Even here, it shows that we're not on this journey alone. We have a cloud of witnesses who surround us, who help us stay on our path. And even though there will be challenges, our crew is there to remind us that we're not alone. Our crew, our pacers, or our community and our sponsors, if we're so willing to accept their assistance. So to repeat a question, when it comes down to your journey, your race, who are those people that you would be willing to really become vulnerable with? Who are those people that you would be willing to have in-depth trail talks with? Sometimes some of the best therapy can be found on the trail with two runners who understand each other and are prepared to be open and honest and listen to each other as they navigate this terrain together. And similarly, sometimes those feelings of shame, self-doubts, fears, and insecurities can be reconciled because of the presence of a caring, thoughtful other who is willing to acknowledge our brokenness with us. Now that last quote that I said is taken from an article called Bound by Brokenness by Ron Johnson. And the full quote reads, "The difference between a suffering that destroys us and a suffering that transforms us begins with the presence of a caring, thoughtful other who can acknowledge that brokenness with us." When we're on a journey with others, whether that journey is simply a run or the journey of life, we're frequently navigating similar terrain. And as it says in the big book, a shared experience creates a bond. A journey of recovery is about learning how to trust the new terrain that you're being confronted with again and again. Recognizing that you don't have to do this alone. Bringing those caring, thoughtful others who have done this journey before and can help you navigate that new terrain. Another thing to focus on in your race is the goal. Again, in some ultras, there's no set distance. You might have 12, 24, 48, or even more or less hours to run, walk, or crawl. Whatever distance works for you. But have your goal in mind and work on training for that goal. Now this year, as I said at the beginning, I'm not able to do the virtual London Marathon because I have a few bigger goals. The New York City Marathon and the Philadelphia Marathons that are actually 2 weeks apart from each other in November. Don't ask me why I do this to myself. Some years back, and I actually believe it was around about this weekend or last weekend, my doctor told me that if I wanted to run 2 big races that I had planned a little later in the year, that I should skip the half that I had planned to do on one of these 2 weekends because I had an injury. Now I could do that half, but that was going to make my injury worse, and that would limit the potential for me being able to do these other 2 races later in the year. And those 2 races were my main goal. So this is the thing, we need to learn what is the goal that's the most important here. And then we need to learn to focus on that goal. A virtual marathon is great. I did several last year. Yeah, again, I don't know why I do this to myself. Virtual marathons, seriously. And London has a really good app, and it's actually quite fun to do. But the reality is it's still only virtual. If I have the opportunity to do a marathon virtually or in person, the bigger goal is going to be that in-person marathon. I'm going to opt for that in person because that's where the energy is. That's where the great cloud of witnesses is. And they're the people that are literally going to be there to cheer me on throughout the race in real time. There's no hiding behind a computer screen. And when it comes to meetings, virtual meetings have served their purpose. They still do, and they can still be great for people to connect when the weather's really bad or it's too dangerous to go outside for whatever reason. But the reality is, if we're striving for endurance, it becomes more helpful to know that we're in the trenches and on the trails with people who can physically be there with us, in person. That's where the rubber hits the road. So having a goal is key. And having those people right there with you is important. Just like my virtual London Marathon, there will be times where something may be placed in our path that becomes too tempting for us. And it might try and distract us from what that ultimate goal is. Now, being a runner with a bunch of friends, we kind of sort of enable each other. We enable the heck out of each other, to be quite honest, to sign up for races, and the next new shiny race that comes along, we're all like in and we all sign up for. And that's one of the things that we do with each other until we settle into our favorite races and our friends' favorite races too. But sometimes signing up for all these different shiny, spectacular new races can get in our way of focusing on what our ultimate goal is. Again, I'm missing out on the virtual London Marathon so I can be healthy enough for New York City and Philly. the 2 in-person races where a large number of my friends are going to be. From a recovery perspective, the goal is recovery. It's to stay sober. Now, I want you to remember this clearly. You ask for what you want, not what you don't want. So if you say the goal is, I don't want to drink, it's going to lead you to thinking about drinking. But if you say the goal is, I want to stay sober, it's going to lead you to think about staying sober. So plant your goal as that, I want to stay sober. Now, I'm sure you've all had this experience, or you're going to have an experience like this. Imagine that you're invited to a wedding or a party or something else where there's going to be alcohol or something like that present. Your goal, your bigger overarching goal, is to stay sober. There are going to be drinks around though, and that voice in your head is going to try and tell you, hey, just have one. You want to fit in, right? You want to be like everyone else. Your overarching goal is to stay sober. That drink is the equivalent of my virtual London marathon. Do I want to run it? Yes. Am I jealous that some of my friends are going to be going out there in this weather? I don't know about that, but in this weather doing this? Actually, I am jealous. But my goal is bigger, and I have to run my race and support them in theirs. And when it comes down to weddings or parties or other celebrations or events, you can remember that your goal is bigger too. There will be challenges, and those challenges are going to try and take you away from your focus, from your goal. But as you pull the people who are helpful for you around you, and you remember your training, the work that you put in here, the meetings, the fellowship, the daily inventories, the amends, and the why of why you're doing this, you will build up your endurance and stay focused on your bigger goal, which is to stay sober. So endurance is more than a mindset. It's about utilizing your resources well. It's about finding your people, finding your goal, finding your why, and not letting anything distract you from the journey that you are on. Remember this, no one else can run your race for you. There will be challenges, but there will also be support. And as long as you are willing to accept that support. So run your own race with strength and endurance. Don't go outside your comfort zone until you're trained and have enough support. And stay focused on your journey. Keep your crew close and keep your eye on the goal. Amen.